Hi class. In this mini lecture, we're going to talk about the critical review and how to begin writing the critical review. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the exercise that is listed up on Blackboard. And this exercise is really to help you to begin to understand how to write in a language that uses either fact or inferences, but tries to avoid opinion. And I know we have now entered, perhaps politically, an era of post-fact importance. But in science, fact is still important, and inference, which is a sort of opinion, but that is factually derived, is still important. Opinion, that which is your own personal idea, but that cannot be verified by fact, which may make you a fine politician, is not acceptable in the realm of science still. So what do we mean by opinions, facts, and inferences? An opinion is a belief or assumption that an individual may have that is not based in scientific evidence. You cannot point to any studies or facts that support your idea. Appealing as it might be, it is still your own personal opinion. And they don't belong in a scholarly research paper. Fact is a statement concerning data that was obtained in your study or in another study. And often you find a lot of these factual statements in the results section of every research report. So fact is really just straightforwardly saying, this is what was found, these two groups were different, this was correlated with this, and stating without any sort of interpretation exactly what was found. Inference is where you look at the data obtained in your study or in another person's study, and you try to draw some conclusions about the data. This is acceptable because you're looking at fact and you're drawing some kind of idea or conclusion about what it means. I could come along, look at the same facts or ideas, and draw different conclusions, and this is where we have debate or discussion as to what things actually mean. But in science, this is acceptable. If we're both using the same set of facts and debating or concluding things from those facts, that is fine. And often in the discussion section of a research report, or sometimes in the literature review, you find inferences. So for homework, what you're going to do is you're going to evaluate each of the following statements, and you're going to decide if it's best considered a fact, an opinion, or an inference. Is it a statement about data, something that a person says that is not backed up by any data, or is it a statement that relies on an interpretation of data? So fact, opinion, or inference. So you're going to go through these 10 different examples and you're going to decide, is it fact, opinion, or inference? You can find this worksheet in the Blackboard, and you don't have to rewrite the questions. You can just send your 1 through 10 and whether you thought it was a fact, opinion, or inference, and we'll go over this in class. But this will basically get you used to the style of writing that is necessary for a critical review. A critical review does not use opinion. It is factual based, and it is also sometimes inference based, where you as the writer are trying to make some kind of conclusion about what all the literature meant for the person reading. And most importantly, the critical review is citing facts basically to build a case for the importance of your study. And this was discussed in the main lecture before. So let's talk about the critical review checklist and what goes into the critical review. So the first thing you're going to need for the critical review is your title page, and that includes your title, proposed project, name, etc., etc. In your critical review, you're going to have an explicit statement of purpose concerning your study. It's not necessarily your hypothesis, which will come at the end, but in the first or second paragraph of the paper, like in the outline that you just did, you want to define for your reader what was the purpose or what will be the purpose of the study. A critical review is also written in the past tense. So when you're writing, studies have already been done and you use the past tense to describe them. it is important that you write thematically. So you've been doing your outline, you've been putting together pieces of information, studies that seem to revolve around a particular theme. And that's what you're going to do when you're writing, is you're going to, like I said with the child maltreatment and health study, maybe one of my themes is gender of the victim. And health outcomes are different for males and females. I will pull together in a paragraph or two all of the studies that have reviewed information on health outcomes based on gender. I don't just write up an abstract of one study, all the findings of one study, and slap it down next to the findings of another study and the findings of another study, having little paragraphs that are really abstracts of studies all together. A critical review will organize and review thematically the information and make it relevant to the project choices that you're making. So if we kind of go over to the sample critical review, so in Blackboard you should see that there is a sample critical review from a paper that I wrote that I have sort of put up there for you to read. So if you go to the section that says Experiences of Child Maltreatment and Health, I want you to take a minute and just read down the whole page. So better than looking at it here while I'm kind of scrolling, pause the lecture now and sort of take a couple of minutes to actually read through this so you can kind of see what's going on. So pause now, take a minute, go read it on your own at your own pace, and then come back and we're going to discuss a little bit of what we mean by writing thematically. Okay, I assume you've paused and now you're back and all sorts of time has happened that I was not aware of. Okay, so if we kind of look at the way that things are structured, the first paragraph is really a sort of introductory paragraph where I'm telling the readers what the sort of main theme of the paper, main theme of the section is going to be about. And here, I'm sort of saying a provocative question is whether experiences of childhood maltreatment can lead to adverse physical and mental health effects years later in adulthood. So this first paragraph, and you can see I don't, summarize one study and another study and another study. I really say, okay, here's some material linking physical maltreatment to health, and here are the particular studies that did that. And also, different medical conditions. And here I list out all the different medical conditions, and these are all the studies that found those particular findings. So this paragraph really orients the reader generally to the problem. Then, if you kind of look down, can you identify the themes of the next and coming paragraphs? So looking at this paragraph, what theme do you think is in that paragraph? I think that it has to do with a transition now from just physical abuse to also looking at emotional abuse. So emotional abuse now becomes its own paragraph and theme. Can you take a look at this paragraph and see what the theme might be? Personally, I think it has to do more with blood pressure. So if you look, most of the literature in this is very specifically looking at cardiovascular issues and blood pressure. This next paragraph, what theme is that paragraph using? Here I would say we start transitioning to mental health and psychological functioning. So you can kind of get an idea where sometimes material is used in more than one paragraph, but each paragraph is written thematically. It's pulling together studies based on a particular theme, and then at the end, I kind of make some kind of conclusion. So here I review all of the information on blood pressure and health and maltreatment, and I kind of say, well, overall, it is still unclear whether experienced childhood maltreatment contributes to elevated blood pressure in young adults. So this is where I'm kind of making some kind of inference, right? I'm looking at all the facts and I'm kind of saying to the reader, this is what was found. But of course, it's really setting myself up because I'm going to be doing a study with young adults. So I'm pointing out gaps in the literature, things that were not done, things that are missing that my study is going to fulfill and my study will do. So study this as a template or example of how the literature review can be written. And next on our list, you don't discuss methodological detail of studies except as they shed light on inconsistencies. So one mistake students sometimes make is they use a lot of space to talk about methodology, where it may or may not be informative. So when you do talk about the methodology of a study, you can often do it very, very short, a very brief description of it, unless it's really important, particularly for something that you're going to do or do differently. Then you can go into more of an argument. But otherwise, don't spend half a page talking about the methodology of one study. Often the methodology is a very quick description. We had the mini lecture on APA style. You cite sources in APA at the point at which you first start using them. So what this means is here, Springer, Sheridan, Kuo, and Carnes analyzed population-based survey, blah, 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 blah. So you can see I have a couple of sentences maybe about what they were doing and finding, but I cite them and their study at the point at which I first start discussing that material. Sometimes students make the mistake of discussing the material like at the end of the fourth sentence when they've been talking about it for a paragraph, and it's really unclear where the information came from. So in APA style, you cite it at the point at which you first start using them. Citations are an active voice, and you use an informative verb. So authors theorized, argued, found, noted, posited, hypothesized. Action words, also in past tense, not, that the author said something, or using passive voice. We had the exercise on hypotheses last class, and you're going to have a hypothesis at the end of your review of literature. And that is to be tested, not something that you can prove or show. Show is, of course, past tense. Show is passive voice, so you wouldn't use that word. But hypotheses are something to be tested, and you will end your review of literature with a hypothesis. Also, you avoid setting up straw men. For example, don't criticize studies endlessly about the methodology, and then later propose to use that very same methodology in your own study. If the methodology is so horrible, then why are you going to use it? Usually, again, we don't get into excessive amounts of discussion of features of studies or common characteristics of published works unless you're really going to do something different. Your references, we had in the mini lecture on APA style, a talk about how to set up your reference page, and you're going to also be doing that for homework as your second part of homework. So you have a reference page, and you've cited all of your sources in APA style. Importantly, if you have a reference in your reference page, that citation should appear in your paper. If there is a citation in your paper, that citation should appear in the reference page. They should match one for one. There shouldn't be anything in your reference page that doesn't appear in the paper, and nothing in the paper that doesn't appear in the reference page, vice versa. So everything should be cited in APA style. Also, sometimes students make the mistake of reading material in one study about another study, and they cite the study that was reviewed by someone else. Don't do that. What you would want to do is try to get the original source, or cite the paper that you read it in as a review of the literature and reviewing that study. Sometimes when there are references that do not match up, it is because students have cited something that they read in another study. Either get the original citation or cite the study that you're reading, the one that you have, as the source of that material. And so you're going to also do the APA reference page for your additional homework.